Marco. Et salut les copains, bienvenue. Aujourd'hui, on est en compagnie de monsieur le game designer de Lorcana. Excusez-moi du peu, et on a la chance d'avoir une super interview avec lui, on est super content. Donc là, on va tout de suite passer en anglais, et oui, parce que nous sommes international avec Entrejeux Studio, n'est-ce pas? Mais bien sûr, nous vous ferons la traduction pour cette vidéo. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name's Ryan Miller. I am the co-designer and brand manager of Disney Lorcana.
Yeah. I haven't precise yet, but we are here at Cannes for the fish, and you give us some of your time, and thank you very much for this, because we can share this with our community, with asking you some questions about Lorcana, about the future of Lorcana, the Lorcana actual play, and how you design the game in general. So that's really interesting for us, of course, but for our community, so thank you for this. And you will see me looking at my phone because all the questions are here and I have to do the translation in direct. So please be cool with me because I'm not fluent in English, as you can see. So yeah, we will start directly with first questions. So here, for example, we wanted to know for you and for the Lorcana game, what is the difference between the first draft of the game and now the version here? Because we know that it's a complicated, travel process to get a final game, especially when you are working with Disney, probably. So can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, so I worked with my partner, Steve Warner, who's a dear friend of mine. I've known him for 20 years. We worked together on many projects. We came up together in Wizards of the Coast. And he's like a brother to me. He was in my wedding. Like, he's just a fantastic man. So when he and I first started designing the game, really the first step is deciding who it is for, right? And we really wanted to make sure that we did a game that gamers and trading card gamers could play and find strategy in, but also Disney fans who have never played a trading card game before would have a welcoming experience with. And so that was our first goal. So once we kind of mapped out what we wanted the game to be in a broader sense, then it was a matter of actually just trying different ideas. And so like the very first idea, I don't even remember because we went through a dozen different games designs. We came up with, and it's really a process of just coming up with a new idea and trying it out. We make some cards and shuffle and play and then we decide, okay, is this going in the direction we want it to go? So there was at least 12 different games that we designed to varying levels of completion. And really, it was about a 6-month process. Like we really, there was a lot of times where we got very excited about a game. We'd be like, very excited. It's like a roller coaster. You're very excited, and then something happens, and oh no, we just have to like throw that game away. Yeah, we throw that game away, and yeah, it was a lot of emotional, a lot of emotional stuff going on because we're very excited, and then we'd go no, and so I'd say about 5 months in, we really started to kind of get the design that became the current Disney Lorcana. And really started playing that, and even after the 6-month point, we still made little changes here and there, but it was pretty solid at that point. So it went through there were vastly different games that we tried because of that goal, right? How do you make a game for gamers and for Disney fans that haven't played that type of game? And so we feel like with the game that we ended up with, it I think struck a nice balance between the two.
Yeah, definitely. What we can see when playing Lorcana is that you managed to design a game where we can nearly touch the different characters, what they are having as a role in the Disney movies. How do you do to implement this into a game?
I mean, that was also one of our big goals, right? We wanted to make sure that as much as possible, every character card feels like that character. And it's important to us because we love these characters too, right? And we understand that people who love these characters need to trust us with their characters, right? Yeah. And so the attention to detail is really, really important in everything we do for Lorcana, from the game design to the art. I mean, all the details you can find in the art is just really fun. All the hidden Mickeys and things like that is just really fun. But from a game design standpoint, we start with the character. We know, okay, this is going to be Maleficent, and she's going to be super rare, for example, right? Okay. and we start from there, and then we decide what color that card's going to be, which ink color, and that helps us inform what the character is going to do. So we take a ruby card, for example. Ruby tends to be known for being very brash, rushing in and not thinking things through, and so we take that kind of mechanical personality and we blend it with the personality of the character that we were trying to make. And some characters, like my favorite example of this, I think is from set 1. Very simple example of Grammatala. Now, Grammatala, if you haven't seen the movie, I'm going to spoil it for you, but she passes away in the film. I'm so sorry I spoiled that for you. But she comes back as this kind of spirit guide to help Moana. And in our game, when she is discarded from play, she turns into a resource. So she's always with you. Helping you. And so it's those kinds of mechanical connections to the characters that I think is the most important because it not only reads like the character but feels like the character when you play them. And so it's one of my favorite parts of designing cards for Lorcana. I think one of my favorites was Tamatoa, also from Moana, but Drab Little Crab. So in his song, the first line of his song, he says he wasn't always this glam. He was a drab little crab once. I'm not sure what that is in French, so sorry about that. But I was like, we got to make that card. We got to make a card of Tamatoa, drab little crab, just to show that we're exploring these different aspects. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm a lifelong Disney fan, so this has just been two of my favorite things come together. So
Definitely, but that's definitely the fact that we can feel this into the game design. So that's why this question is here now. It's because we can feel it. As you said, I'm playing Blue, for example. So Grand-mère Tsala, which is the name in France, is really this way we play it is like the feeling we have. And we found that we can see exactly how it happened in the movie.
Yay. Yeah, I think one of my favorite mechanics in that vein is songs. And we knew kind of early on that we wanted to have songs be a part of this game because songs are such a part of Disney. And we actually struggled quite a bit with how to implement it in a way that felt right, but didn't add too much complexity. And at the end of the day, I don't remember who it was, Steve or I, came up with the idea of simply just having your characters be able to sing a song instead of you playing it. And it turns it into partly very fun. When Hey Hey sings a song, that's just hilarious. I'm really like Moana. I just watched Moana 2 days ago, so I think that's why Moana's in my head right now. But having a character sing a song they don't normally sing is super fun, and it also provided though a nice strategic choice because instead of paying the ink, I will have one of my characters sing it, and sometimes one is better than the other depending on the game, and so it turned out to be a really nice kind of mix of the theme and the gameplay. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Okay, and so here you're specifically talking about the fact that you implemented songs in the gameplay, in the game design. Is there one point in the game design when you had an idea saying, okay, this will make it and this will be the difference for Lorcana? Is it the song system or anything else? Or maybe something we don't know yet?
Well, it's interesting. We didn't actually design this game to be innovative. That was not our goal. We actually wanted to make sure that the game that we came up with elevated the theme itself. And so to that end, the game itself, we wanted to kind of be quiet almost, right? We want it to, that way the Disney characters and the feel of the characters could be at the front, right? Okay. And so, for example, one of the early mechanics of the game was that, so in this game, you can have your characters challenge your opponent's characters. Yeah. Well, originally, villains could only challenge heroes, and heroes could only challenge villains. And that sounds really thematic and really that makes a lot of sense, but it was terrible. It was awful because when you're building your deck now, you had to make sure you had basically half villains and half, heroes. And then when you're playing, if you didn't draw, if I didn't draw enough heroes, then your villains are just going to go, and there's nothing I can do about it. So that was an example of the game design being too loud, right? It was being too much and getting in the way of just this fun aspect. Because really what sets us apart is Disney, the ability to have your favorite characters just out, on your team, helping you on your quest. And so we wanted to make sure the game never got in the way of that, right? Okay. That only supported that. And I think songs is the best example. Now, from the mechanical standpoint, I think the thing that sets it apart is the ink system. Now, so basically in this game, you can take cards from your hand and put them down as ink as a resource. Ink is like the way you pay for cards, right? Now, that's not a new mechanic, right? Lots of games have done that. So I'm not claiming that at all. But what we added to that was this idea that only some cards can be inked, some cannot. And that, from a play standpoint, when you're building your deck, is really interesting because you can't fill your deck with these cards that don't give you ink. But from a design standpoint, it gives us the ability to take the ink off of cards and kind of balance whole strategies, right? So like control, for example, is a strategy where you control your opponent. Basically, you control what they do, usually by taking away all their cards. And you need that in any trading card game. Like you need that interactivity. But too much of that is super unfun. And we knew we didn't want that. So we can take the ink off of the control cards, and that way if you put too many control cards in your deck is way less consistent, right? And so it was a fascinating thing that I've never really seen that in another game. I'm sure it exists, and someone in the comments will probably say it's in this other game. But the idea to balance an entire strategy is really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. One of the questions we were talking about, the game design and so on, and how you achieved to get at this point of the Lorcana game design. Is there any influence in the board game universe or anything else that you used to build your game design in general? Any influences you can have for this?
I mean, I think any kind of artistic endeavor has its influences, right? We definitely wanted to, especially for trading card gamers, kind of speak their language in a way. And so things, obviously Magic is an ancestor of this game because of the groundbreaking game design, groundbreaking idea of just building your own deck, right? That sort of thing. From the board game space, I think it was more taking what we'd learned, because board games are obviously for a slightly different audience, generally speaking, than trading card games. So kind of taking what we learned about game design from that, and also rules writing and things like that. So, it's hard to point to specific things, but there are a lot of influences that Steve and I uses.
I can just imagine, because for example, I'm painter, a miniature painter, and I obviously try to get some influences on other painter, on design, on Lorcana cards. For example, I can take a Lorcana card just to get some color information, light information, and try to reproduce. We all have these kind of influences, and sometimes it's hard to say this really influenced me, because it's like maybe here in our minds, but we can't know it exactly, we can't point it out.
I think for me, like actually Disney was a big influence, because I grew up in Southern California, but kind of poor, right? And every once in a while, my grandmother would take me to Disneyland, which is about a couple hours drive away from where we live. And even as a little boy, going to that place and seeing how immersive it was, right? So you felt really transported. You were no longer in California, right? You were in Adventureland, right? You were in Pirates of the Caribbean, right? And to me, that was so special as a little kid to really experience that. And then later on in life, when I experienced core hobby games, I started games like old games like BattleTech and Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. And it had a similar kind of way of immersing you and transporting you to these other worlds. And I think that early experience with Disney and the immersion is really what set me on the path to being a game designer, right? Is how can I, through my games, transport you into these fun worlds, like Lorcana, this idea of my favorite characters together on my team, going on a quest with me, how can I make people feel that the characters feel right, and that sort of thing. And so it's always been kind of a passion of mine, is immersion and transporting, and that ability for us to kind of, fly away from our normal lives for a little bit and have fun in these other worlds. It's one of my favorite things.
Okay. The less we can say that you achieved it, that you can be proud of it, because when we are playing Lorcana, we are playing with Disney characters, definitely. One last question, I will read it because it's really a specific question right in here. Seeing all the meta deck have been prevalent on the play feed, would you say that some cards might have been overpowered in their initial design and should need a rework, like Maui Chapter 1, Madame Mim Fox for Chapter 2, or Jafar Legendary Chapter 3? We say Chapter 3, it's just here, it's just right now, so we haven't even played it, but just for example.
It's interesting. So card balance is an interesting topic, because it's not a on-off switch. It's not balanced or unbalanced, right? That's not how it works. It's a vast spectrum of balance. And when you're designing a set, it's important to have cards along that spectrum, right? You want cards on this end, you want cards on that end. Most cards should fit towards the middle because we do strive for balance, but the problem with balance is it can often come at the cost of excitement, right? One of the things that's really fun about exploring a Lorcana set is finding which cards are on this end of the spectrum of balanced, right? Finding out which cards are really powerful, and it's also a way that players get better at a game is by learning how to evaluate cards. And so if every card was perfectly balanced with every other card, first of all, that's just impossible. Like, that's just like mathematically just impossible to do. But if it were to happen, I think what we'd actually see is a game that is a bit more dull, right? It's not very exciting. Also, what would happen, I think, is that building a deck would be exponentially harder, because if you're trying to think, well, if these two cards are equal in power, which one do I add in my deck, right? And it's so hard when they're that close together. And so I think that spectrum is important for many reasons, but one of the reasons is it makes deck building more fun, right? And it makes deck building skill more important, I think. If they're too close together, it's just too hard.
Yeah. I have to say that I'm playing blue,
Okay.
and I still struggle choosing between Mickey and Winnie. So if you have all the cards at the same level, definitely that would be a nightmare for me to choose.
Right, exactly. And that's an interesting case there too, because Mickey just gives you an ink. I'm assuming you're talking about Mickey Detective, right? Yeah. And then Winnie the Pooh, of course, every time he quests, you can take any card. Now, those are two actually very different cards, right? Because Winnie lets you put cards down by choice that aren't inkable, right? You can't normally put in ink. Whereas Mickey, you get a random card, and it could be the card you needed, right? And so there's an interesting balance and trade-off between that. And those are the kinds of things that I think are fun for deck builders to really kind of chew through and say, okay, for my deck, which of these two is better? Or both, but how many? Do I put 4 of one and 2 of the other? You know, they both cost the same, so like they're occupying a similar slot. So yeah, those kinds of choices I think are interesting for players because it helps them learn and get better as a player, and that's what we want, right? We want people feeling like they're leveling up as they play and as they build decks.
So yeah, we'll stop the interview now because we are slightly going on a more competitive point of view, and this you will find it on the Ketal channel YouTube. So then you can go there to kind of see a second part of the interview, but more on a competitive point of view with you again. So yeah, thank you very much for your time. It was really interesting to discuss with you, to meet you. I hope that you spend good time in France here, and yeah, see you then on another fair with another chapter of Lorcana.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here in France and meet so many great French players. I'm really proud of the community that we've built here for Lorcana, and it's just great. I just had a game, by the way, with this kid who, Paul, thank you, Paul, I think I said it right. Really cool kid. I think he was like 9 or 10, and he was just super fun. But it's just, I love coming out and playing with the players, and France is amazing. So, merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Just one last word.
Oh.
One word.
Okay.
Yeah, you can say one last word. Choose one word. Choose wisely.
Fun.
Yeah.
Fun. That's what I'm about. Fun.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.